Welcome back to the Farm Show here on Westplex Talk 104.5. I'm your host, John Combest. It is November 15th, 2025, and you are listening to C Block. That's what we call the third segment of our show. We're going to dive right into Bayer earnings. Now, we're going to start with something novel that the Bayer Investor Relations team does. You know, it's hard to get people to pay attention to an earnings report. They tend to be pretty boring. It's a lot of numbers. And really, the only exciting thing comes when executives offer commentary. And usually, that's pretty scripted until you get to the Q&A portion of earnings calls and media calls. We'll get to that in just a moment. But back to the cool idea that the folks at Bayer do with their investor calls. They do a little 90-second video. They call it 90 days in 90 seconds because it reflects what the company's done in the fiscal quarter. And for Bayer, the message is delivered by CEO Bill Anderson. So the investor relations folks, we can presume, put together a pretty tight script. Bill does a little walking and talking at the beginning, and then sidles up to a stand-up table and has a little chat with you, the viewer. Now, let's play that 90-second clip. I think it's a pretty good overview of how Bayer's quarter was altogether. Let's roll into it.
Today we're reporting our results 9 months into the year. Here are the highlights.
Ooh, yeah, I love that music while he's walking. Boom, 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 boom. I'm so casual. Look at me. I'm not stiff. I'm a CEO. I'm casual.
We're on track to deliver. We have strong launch momentum in pharmaceuticals. Linquit, a treatment for moderate to severe hot flashes associated with menopause, was just approved in the U.S. Great news.
That is great news, Bill. Hey, here's an idea. Can you maybe do something for perimenopause too? A bunch of us Gen X guys would appreciate that.
We're planning on making it available to women this month. Our corn business is offsetting regulatory impacts in crop science, and consumer health is navigating a soft market. In litigation, we have a dynamic phase ahead of us, and each prong of our strategy is advancing. We're awaiting an important decision on our petition to the U.S. Supreme Court. We're provisioning for and making settlements, and we're advocating for regulatory clarity and more. We see a path to significant containment by the end of 2026. More to come. We're focused on finishing this year strong and carrying that momentum into the new year. We have currency headwinds to contend with, but we're innovating faster, our costs are going down, and the people of Bayer are taking charge and delivering our mission every day. Let's go.
Okay, with our time left today, we're going to start with the official investor call first. And we're going to start with prepared remarks. Here's what CEO Bill Anderson had to say about glyphosate.
In the glyphosate litigation, we're expecting a recommendation from the U.S. Solicitor General as to whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court should hear our case. We remain optimistic that this recommendation will occur in time for the current session, which ends in June 2026. This is an important decision, and we have plans in place for all outcomes. In the legislative realm, we continue to believe that U.S. farmers need certainty. That's particularly true in times of challenging farm economics. At the federal level, both the Appropriations Bill and the Farm Bill are important pieces of legislation that reinforce clarity on how essential crop protection tools are regulated in American agriculture. The government shutdown has delayed congressional activity. It's essential that progress is made, and we're making that case. At the state level, another round of legislative sessions will soon kick off, beginning in January. We think it's very important to defend the work of American farmers, and we will advocate for the innovation and the regulation they need.
Okay, now let's get to more stuff that will directly affect your farm and the products you choose. Bill says the company is eliminating less desirable products.
Our crop science organization is aggressively focused on execution of our 5-year plan. We're actively streamlining our portfolio and operations by outsourcing 12 active ingredients and discontinuing 150 products. This strategic focus enables us to concentrate on innovative crop solutions.
And then Bill goes on to talk about some products that we don't really care about because they're just South American products. Now, let's focus on dicamba. Let's go through here and hear everything the company had to say about whether or not farmers will actually be able to use dicamba next year.
Sure, and thank you, Richard. So first, we are confident for the dicamba label for next season. We heard from the EPA that this remains a core priority for them, even with the shutdown in the government in the U.S. remains a key priority for EPA, and we are confident that we're going to get on time for the farmers next year. Will have a positive impact on your first element of your question about pricing of soybean for us, right? So we're counting on that one for the next season, working, of course, and then we're going to have more clarity when we have on the next quarter to share more details. But we are planning to get the registration for the season. It's in time for that, and we're going to be able to have some price impact on that one for our soybean franchise and also cotton franchise, of course, as we have. So that's part of the plan.
That was Rodrigo Santos, who leads up the crop science division at Bayer. What I'm hearing him say when he talks about pricing and pricing power is, if indeed Bayer does get approval for dicamba, then they will be able to charge farmers more for soybeans and cottonseed, of course, that is dicamba tolerant. So good news for Bayer. And probably good news for farmers because we have that additional tool in the toolbox, but it will certainly mean higher prices for seed. That's what I hear Rodrigo say. A bit later, Rodrigo was asked about market dynamics.
So on a normal circumstance, this last season, we had a very high area of corn in US, 98 million acres. On a normal crop rotation, you would have next year coming to probably close to a historical level that you have in US, like 91, 92 million acres. This would be on normal circumstances. As you said, what would be a trade-off is that you would see a significant area increase of soybean. A lot of uncertainty right now based on the agreements between China and US. If the agreement goes in place, probably that's exactly what you're going to see in the market. If not, as you said, you could see a higher area of corn and more soybean coming out of Latin America. What I feel strong about in our case, our position both in corn and soy in North America and in Latin America gives us a good position to be prepared for that market. Hopefully by the next quarter, we're going to be able to get more insight on how this trading will finish, and then we're going to be able to be more precise for the guidance of next year. So stay tuned on that one. In February, we're going to talk about that for sure.
Continuing on, there was a two-part question. The first part about short stature corn, also known as by the brand name Preceon, and then a follow-up question about the status of glyphosate at the Supreme Court. Rodrigo answered that first question about Preceon. Bill added a little bit more color about short stature corn, and then Bill directly addressed the glyphosate question. Have a listen.
Sure. And really excited to talk about that. These last months, I was in Iowa, walking a field with a farmer harvesting 300 bushels per acre on the new launches. It's really cool to see what we are seeing in the market. This year, we are going to 600 farmers that we had, 80,000 acres in US. And this is the groundbreakers work that we're doing with the breeding version. Next year, we're going to go to 200,000 acres in US. And as we prepare for the major breakthrough that is the biotech launch that we're planning for 27 and beyond. So a lot of excitement in the organization on the Preceon launch in the next years. We are working very diligent with every farmer on the groundbreaker exercise to make sure that they take the maximum value of the technology. And again, driving higher yields, more stability, a broader experience with giving them more flexibility on how they manage the field is very exciting to see. And next year will be another step towards that and preparing really the launch for the biotech version that will allow us to go really broad acres in US. Also, just to mention that we also have this right now happening in Europe, a lot of excitement on silage as well with the farmers when you go to Italy and some other places. And we are expanding to close to 100,000 acres in Europe as well with the short stature corn, as said. So great momentum and preparing for the full launch of the biotech version in US. Bill, Wolfgang?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Rodrigo. I was just, I was in Greece recently and also hearing stories from one of our major partners in Southern Europe about the short stature corn and the impact. And I mean, the dairy farmers are saying, hey, this, they're basically, the cows produce more milk on the short stature corn. And this has been written up now from some agronomists in academia that, that basically the corn has a lower lignin content, so it's more easily digestible by the dairy cattle, and they like it. So that's an extra added benefit of innovation. But on the question about the Supreme Court petition, that's on the Durnell case on glyphosate, that appeal, we remain optimistic that the U.S. Solicitor General will provide a recommendation to the Supreme Court on this case in time for the Supreme Court to hear the case during their current session, which ends in June of 2026. So that, we're hopeful that that will happen in the next couple months or so. And I just remind you that we think it's an important opportunity for the court to clarify the authority of the EPA with respect to pesticide labeling, but it's not our only approach, and that's why we have this multi-pronged approach. We look forward to hopefully getting our day in front of the Supreme Court, but we have other things we're approaching in parallel, and that would be a part of closing things, but we have other approaches as well, and we plan to bring the full range of tools at our disposal to continue to get that closed out.
And the final question that we'll highlight from this investor call was about generic pressures. In other words, an influx of generic glyphosate and then an influx of generic active ingredients for other herbicides. How is Bayer managing that? Rodrigo Santos gave the answer.
Thank you, Joel. And that's very consistent to the discussion that we had in May 13, right? If you go deeper on the presentation that we had on May 13, our view on crop protection is these three elements of how we need to manage that one. This is the reality of the market and the three elements to manage that one. One is innovation, and you just heard examples of that, right? Planexus, we just had the first sales, as Bill mentioned, in Latin America. We're going to take this to 70 countries, 50 crops. We are just now submitting to the key markets, Icafolin. We have Convintro, new herbicide, waiting for the regulatory approval in US. We have Verango Prime in Latin America and in Brazil to have a very good expansion as well, together with Fox X Pro and Curbix. So one element is the innovation for sure. The second element is all the effort that we're doing to be competitive. And you heard from AI by AI, which are the ones that we're going to produce in Dormagen, which are the ones that we are outsourcing, the divestment of some of the low margin products and some of the phase out that we had. So this is the life cycle of the portfolio of crop protection is very important. And finally, I would say that we've been working in that for the last 2 or 3 years, and you heard a little bit from me in the past about operational excellence in the field. We migrate on crop protection to work a lot on the. Can you hear me? I think. Yeah. Yep. We migrate here to make sure that we were focused the entire scheme on sellout, not on selling. Our incentives, our partners' incentives on that one as well. So high focus on that one, managing inventory at the channel at the lowest level. So on the new dynamics of crop protection that we recognize, you're going to need innovation, but also you're going to need to be cost competitive and very effective on operations. So we feel that is the new plan, and that's very consistent to the 5-year framework that we described it. Thank you for the question.
Okay, it sounds like Rodrigo might have had a little audio snafu there for just a minute, but he powered through it, as you would expect. What I'm hearing Rodrigo and Bill say on this call is that in reverse order, going from Rodrigo's most recent answer there, they're looking at U.S. approval coming up of Convintro herbicide, long-range approval of Icafolin herbicide in various markets, which is a new active ingredient, And I think perhaps more importantly, for any of us in our broadcast area, it sounds like Bayer is quite confident that they will indeed get EPA approval, get regulatory approval for the over-the-top application of dicamba for the 2026 growing season. Now, every time you hear a company talk about its existing plans, its existing operations, and its future plans, I think it's always good to take a neutral look at it. And a gentleman who's covered Bayer quite closely over the years, from Reuters, Ludwig Berger. Here's what Ludwig had to say about the quarter. His headline was, Bayer expects more hits to 2025 earnings from lawsuits and buyouts. Here's just a couple paragraphs from Ludwig. Bayer said on Wednesday it expected higher one-off costs this year from litigation provisions after recent setbacks in product liability cases and for buying out executives in its ongoing restructuring program. The maker of drugs, seeds, and crop chemicals says it now expects special items to reduce earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, aka EBITDA, but you already knew that. So Ludwig gives a few numbers here. And then for specific color, Ludwig quotes finance chief Wolfgang Nicky said that in 2026, significant currency headwinds would continue while the agricultural market was shaping up to be, quote, quite dynamic. Boy, is that an understatement or what? Bayer said the adverse financial impact from litigation was 934 million euros during the June to September period. Now, Mr. Berger points out last month, the Missouri Supreme Court declined to take up Bayer's appeal of a $611 million verdict over claims that its Roundup weed killer causes cancer. Bayer's CEO, Bill Anderson, has said his goal is to make meaningful progress on glyphosate cases by the end of 2026. Also last month, Mr. Berger continues, a U.S. court reinstated an unfavorable $185 million verdict over contamination with polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, at a Washington state school. Mr. Berger continues, Bayer also said on Wednesday that it had cut about 13,500 full-time positions, resulting in global staffing of about 88,500 since the start of cutbacks to speed up decision-making and to reduce managerial and administrative positions. Now that is up from a job cut tally of 12,000 in August. And if you happen to be on LinkedIn and you're in the St. Louis metro region, you've probably seen a lot of folks who were formerly Bayer employees who are open to work and looking for jobs right now. That's all the time we have this week on The Farm Show. I'm so happy you joined us this week. We'll be back next week, November 22nd, 2025, for another edition of The Farm Show.